Picture this. Your car makes a weird sound on a Tuesday morning. Not a catastrophic sound, just a little rattle that wasn't there yesterday. And instead of thinking, I should get that checked out, your stomach drops. Because you already know what's coming. You're doing math in your head before you've even turned off the engine. Can I make it to payday? Is this a $100 fix or a $1,000 fix? Do I put it on the card that's already close to maxed or the one with the slightly better rate? That feeling, right there, that small jolt of dread over a noise in your engine, that's not really about the car. That's about not having a buffer. And I think almost everyone watching this knows exactly what that feeling is like. You're not bad with money. You're not lazy. You're just one small inconvenience away from a much bigger problem, and some part of you is tired of living like that. So let's talk about the number that actually starts to fix this. Not fix it completely. Nothing fixes it completely. But the number that moves you from constant low-grade panic into something that actually feels like control. That number is $10,000. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, sure, easy for you to say, I want to be clear about something. This isn't a video about hustle or discipline or waking up at 5 a.m. This is a video about why that specific number matters more than people realize and why it's so much harder to reach than it should be. And by the end of this, I want you to understand not just the math behind it, but the psychology, because honestly, the psychology is the part that actually determines whether you get there or not. Here's the thing nobody really tells you about money. Most financial advice is aimed at people who already have breathing room. Invest in index funds. Diversify. Think long-term. Max out your retirement contributions. All true. All useful eventually. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, that advice is like telling someone who's drowning to think about their swimming technique. It's not wrong information. It's just the wrong moment for it. You can't optimize a house that's on fire. You put the fire out first. The real starting point isn't growth. It's protection. And that's where most people get stuck, because we're taught to think about money in terms of what it can buy or what it can earn, instead of what it can absorb. We grow up hearing about salaries and raises and promotions, about the things money gets you. Nobody really sits us down and explains the quieter function of money, which is what it prevents, what it stops from happening. That's a much less exciting conversation, so it rarely gets had. And I think that silence is part of why so many people feel like they're doing everything right and still somehow falling behind. Let me explain what I mean by that. Think about the last time something unexpected happened to you financially. A medical bill, a layoff, a broken appliance, a flight home for a family emergency. These things aren't actually rare. They're not bad luck in the dramatic sense. They're just life happening at its normal, unpredictable pace. Studies on financial stability keep landing on a similar figure, that most households can't absorb an unexpected expense of even a few $100s without borrowing or selling something. That's not a fringe statistic about people who mismanage money. That's most people. That's probably someone you know. Maybe it's you. The problem isn't that these things occur. The problem is what happens next if you have nothing to absorb them with. Without savings, a $200 surprise doesn't stay a $200 problem. It goes on a credit card. That card charges 20-something% interest. You pay the minimum because that's what you can afford. And now that $200 surprise slowly becomes $300, then $400, stretched out over months, sometimes years, quietly eating into every future paycheck before it even arrives. And here's the cruel part. While you're paying that off, another unexpected expense shows up because life doesn't wait for you to recover from the last one. So now there's a second charge stacked on the first. This is how people end up with debt that feels like it came out of nowhere, when really it came from a series of small, understandable, almost unavoidable moments, none of which had anywhere to land except a high-interest balance. This is the part one really want you to sit with for a second. It's not that people are careless. It's that small emergencies, without a buffer, get converted into long-term debt, almost automatically. The system is basically designed to do that conversion for you. And once you're in it, every decision you make afterward is a defensive one. You're not asking, what do I want my life to look like in 5 years? You're asking, how do I get through the next 5 days? That's survival mode. And survival mode has a very specific psychology to it. When you're in it, your brain isn't built for long-term thinking. It's built for immediate threat response. There's actual research on this, The idea that scarcity narrows your focus so intensely that it creates something like a tunnel. You become incredibly good at solving today's problem and almost blind to next month's. Which is exactly why people in financial stress often make choices that look irrational from the outside, but make complete sense from the inside. You take the payday loan not because you don't understand interest rates, but because right now, today, you need the $200, and today always wins when you're in survival mode. It's not a character flaw. It's what scarcity does to a brain, any brain, yours, mine, anyone's. So here's where the $10,000 number comes in. $10,000 isn't wealth. Let's be honest about that from the start, because I don't want to oversell this. It won't buy you a house. It won't let you quit your job. It's not going to show up in some flashy net worth screenshot. And if you're comparing yourself to people online who talk about seven-figure portfolios, 10,000 can even feel a little embarrassing to admit out loud. But what it does is much quieter than that, and honestly, much more important. It acts like a shield, not a sword, a shield. With $10,000 sitting in an account you don't touch for daily spending, that car noise from earlier stops being a 5-alarm emergency. It becomes an inconvenience. Annoying, sure. Costs you $600, sure. But it doesn't spiral. It doesn't become a debt that follows you for 2 years. It gets paid, and you move on with your week. Same with the dentist appointment you've been avoiding, or the month where your hours get cut, or the flight you need to book last minute because someone in your family needs you there. None of these things stop being stressful, but they stop being catastrophic. And there's a massive difference between stressful and catastrophic, even if it doesn't always feel that way from the outside. That's the entire function of this number. It's not about getting rich. It's about interrupting the cycle where small problems become permanent ones. And here's the part that I think is genuinely underrated. Once that shield exists, something shifts in how you think, not just in what you can afford. This is where the psychology becomes just as important as the math. When you have zero savings, every financial decision is reactive. You're responding to threats. But once you have that buffer, your brain has room to ask a completely different kind of question. Instead of, how do I survive this month? You start asking, what do I actually want to build? That's not a small shift. That's the difference between defense and offense, between managing chaos and actually directing your life. Someone in defense mode takes whatever job pays the bills because they can't afford 3 months without income while they look for something better. Someone with a shield underneath them can actually say no to a bad offer, or negotiate, or wait a little longer for the right opportunity because they're not choosing out of desperation. That's not a small advantage. Over the span of a career, that's massive. People talk about this like it's just a mindset trick, positive thinking, whatever. It's not. It's neurological. Chronic financial stress keeps your nervous system in a low-level fight or flight state. And that state is expensive, cognitively. It uses up mental bandwidth that could otherwise go toward planning, learning, negotiating a raise, starting a side project, thinking clearly about a career move, even just being present with the people around you instead of quietly doing math in the back of your mind during dinner. Money stress doesn't just cost money. It costs attention. And attention is what you need to actually improve your situation in the first place. So the anxiety becomes its own trap, keeping people too depleted to do the very things that would relieve the anxiety. It's a strange, almost unfair loop. The people who most need clear thinking to escape financial pressure are the ones whose thinking is most compromised by that same pressure. This is why the first 10,000 is the hardest money you will ever save. Not because the math is harder. $10,000 later in life, once you're earning more, might take you 6 months without much effort. But the first time, when you're earning less, when your habits aren't built yet, when every dollar already has 5 places it wants to go, that same number can take years. And it's not really about arithmetic at all. It's about identity. Saving that first chunk requires you to start seeing yourself differently, not as someone who's just trying to make it to Friday, but as someone who's quietly building something, even when nobody's watching, even when it's boring, even when a part of you wants to spend that extra $200 on something that would feel good right now instead of safe later. And that's genuinely hard, because the reward for saving is invisible. Nobody claps when you don't buy something. There's no moment where your bank app notifies you that you've officially become a person who's in control. It just accumulates, quietly, while everything around you is telling you to spend, upgrade, treat yourself, keep up. And that's really the trade at the center of all this. Short-term comfort versus long-term stability. Nobody likes hearing that, because it sounds like deprivation. But I don't think it has to be that dramatic. It's less about cutting everything out and more about noticing where the money's actually going and redirecting a little bit of it, consistently, toward that shield instead of toward things that disappear the moment you use them. So what does this look like practically, without turning into some extreme lifestyle overhaul? It starts small, almost annoyingly small. An automatic transfer the day you get paid, before you have a chance to spend it, even if it's just $50 or $100. It's not about the amount at first. It's about building the habit of paying your future self before you pay your present comfort. Some people find it helps to keep this money somewhere slightly separate, a different bank even, just enough friction that it doesn't feel as easy to dip into for something unrelated to an actual emergency. Over time, as that account grows, something interesting happens. You start checking it not out of anxiety, but out of something closer to pride. It becomes less about restriction and more about momentum. And momentum is a strange, quiet kind of motivation. It doesn't feel exciting the way a big purchase does, but it compounds, both financially and emotionally. And slowly, without some dramatic before and after moment, you notice the car noise doesn't scare you the way it used to. The unexpected bill doesn't derail your whole month. You start making decisions based on where you want to go, instead of what you're afraid might happen. You might even notice it show up in small, almost unrelated ways. You sleep a little better. You're less short-tempered about money conversations with a partner or a parent. You stop dreading your banking app and start actually opening it. If you're nowhere near $10,000 right now, I want you to hear this clearly. That's not a failure. That's just where you are on a path that most people never even get shown clearly. Nobody sat most of us down and explained that this specific number functions differently from every other amount of money we'll ever save. We were just told to save, vaguely, as if all savings goals feel the same. They don't. This one is different, because this one is the one that changes your relationship with fear. The first steps are always the slowest and the least satisfying, because you're building something invisible before it becomes something real. There's no visible marker of progress at $2,000 the way there is when you finally pay off a loan or get a promotion. It just sits there, growing slowly, asking you to trust a process you can't fully see the results of yet. Progress here doesn't need to be fast. It just needs to be steady, because the goal was never perfection. It was always just enough space to stop reacting to your life and start actually choosing it. And that space, once you have it, tends to be worth a lot more than the number on the account ever suggested it would be. If any part of this felt a little too familiar, do me a favor and just sit with that for a second instead of scrolling past it. You don't need a plan today. You don't need to open your banking app right this minute and transfer money you don't have. You just need to notice where you actually are, honestly, without judging yourself for it. If this helped you see your own situation a little more clearly, that's genuinely the whole point of this channel. I break down the psychology behind money decisions, not just the spreadsheets, because I think most people don't need another formula. They need to understand why they keep making the choices they make. So if that's useful to you, stick around. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of thinking, not louder, not more urgent, just clearer. And if you're already past that first 10,000, or you're working toward it right now, tell me where you're at in the comments. Not the exact number, just the stage. Are you starting from zero? Are you halfway there? Are you past it and thinking about what comes next? I read these, and honestly, seeing where other people are in this same process tends to help more than another lecture ever could. Either way, you're not behind. You're just early in a part of the process that doesn't feel like progress yet. It will.